In front of our regiment's positions, Gobel's screamers began to appear more and more often. "Russ, surrender. Resistance is useless." They shouted hoarsely into their mouthpieces. We knew that the Nazis had a great superiority in manpower and equipment, that they had managed to cut the city into two parts, to deprive us of land links with the big land. But we also knew that the defenders of Stalingrad in all areas are actively defending. Do not give the invaders rest, neither day nor night, inflicting short but sensitive blows that keep the Nazis in suspense around the clock, exhaust them morally and physically. Our fighting skills have grown. The soldiers successfully apply new tactics of close combat. Small assault groups. That in general, not from a sweet life came screamers to persuade us to stop resistance. They lost their faith in easy success, and the combat initiative slips out like a piece of ice from a hot palm. No matter how hard you try, all the drops between your fingers will go out. It is not without reason that the Hitlerites stopped rushing headlong, at full height into the depth of our defence, into the fire sacks.
But though we accustomed them to crawl vipers on the Stalingrad ground even in the hours of calm, it was impossible to weaken combat vigilance. Vipers' bites are poisonous, and the Germans had not given up direct attacks.
Our division was fighting for Mamayev-Kurgan. Battalions of the 1047th Regiment were digging into the enemy defence on the eastern slopes of the mound. Fierce fights broke out here and there. Our assault groups made short fighter strikes. Me also presented his tactical novel. It created a large density of fire with the help of roaming hand machine guns. At the right moment, light machine guns were thrown out on the berm, and with concentrated fire suddenly overwhelmed the approaches to their trench. For our assault groups, they were more dangerous than any pillbox or bunker, because they suddenly appeared and just as quickly disappeared. Yes, fighting with itinerant machine gunners is the first task of a sniper. "You," said the battalion deputy politician senior political officer Yablochkin, having met me in the infirmary where I came for dressing. "You can't do it alone," I replied. "I know," he agreed. "That's why here's a Komsomol assignment for you. Here, at the infirmary, pick up among the wounded fighters marksmanship shooters and prepare them for the fight with roaming machine guns. Understood?" "No." So I got the order to create a sniper school out of wounded soldiers.
So, bro, how's it going in Dolgay?
The soldier stopped, looked me over from head to toe with a stern look and said sternly,
"There are no sweets there. You'll be a crow. You'll be headless in no time." I came to the ravine. There came relative silence, a pause between attacks. Nasty moments of calm. Expectation of new, unexplored trials wears out the nerves of those who have not yet settled down in battle. Especially difficult in such moments, a person with a cowardly character. Such people, as a rule, die morally before their physical death because they do not think how to destroy the enemy, but seek escape from him and perish. And how can it be otherwise? If you have not killed your enemy, he will kill you. Fear. How to overcome it? The answer to this question lurks in the character of man. Where he was formed, what is his life experience? In what conditions his organism was strengthened and hardened? The foundation of strong will. Vasily Fifinov, an artillery fire adjuster, is sitting next to me in the trench. We are sitting tightly pressed against the wall of the trench. Fascist planes are circling over our heads. Nearby mines are bursting. Artillery is working our trenches. The enemy is preparing a new attack. Everything is cracking and cracking. I don't know how long this catavasy will last, but not less than 20 minutes. I look at my neighbours on the right and left. Their faces are as pale as flour. Some of them have shaking hands.
What is the way to restore the soldiers' self-control, to bring them to combat readiness?
From my pocket, I took out a kit set filled to the brim with mahorka. I peeled off a wedge of paper from the newspaper and began to roll a cigar, a goat's leg. Vasily Fifinov followed my example. His hands were big, his palms wide, and his fingers thick. Movement of hands and fingers is calm, balanced. My kit set did not go further than Fifinov.
From my pocket I also took out a device and started to make fire in the old grandfather's way. 2 times I struck my fingers with a crucible instead of a stone. Vasily raised his furry eyebrows, looked at me with a grin in his eyes, as it happens in strong-hearted people. "Are your nerves failing you?" No, I said, not much practice in this area. And how are your nerves?
Vasily took a deep puff of smoke, his eyes down, making a hole in the sand with his finger. My nerves and skin are tin-plated. My father taught me to despise fear. And my fellow countrymen started to talk as if nothing had happened.
He was born and raised in the Urals. His father would come from the Tiger at night and say,
The horse is left in the forest, tangled, with a bell. Go and find it and bring it home.
You go through the forest, Vasily Fifanov tells. It is dark and dark all around, even if you poke your eyes out, and the horse is black and black. Only on the forehead between the eyes there is a white spot. I was afraid. My heart was beating and pounding. I ran at the sound of the bell. I could hardly feel my feet under me. It seemed that behind every bush a beast was hiding and waiting for me. I mustn't look round. If I lose my way, I won't find my horse. Well, and if you don't find the horse, what can be then? I asked to attract the attention of the neighbours. After all, we are talking about overcoming fear.
Fiafanov moved his eyebrows.
Then my father would take the bridle and tinkle my arse and back.
How was it? Did it work? You see, neither hands nor lips are shaking, as in some of those present.
Meanwhile, the artillery preparation of the enemy's attack was over. We took our places and met Hitler's machine gunners with targeted fire. Fiafanov took his time to call the firing lines and called the batteries fire on the lying machine gunners. Quietly, calmly, without panic. And the new attack of the enemy was thwarted by all rule. How not to say a kind word to the company commander, Senior Lieutenant Bolshechapov. It was he who started to erase fear from our soldiers' souls. I remember that on the way to the front he decided to test his sailors for courage. He did it in a rather original way. He armed himself with F1 grenades, lined up all the newcomers in one line, then called one forward, took a grenade out of his bag and quickly explained.
You have to catch the grenade while it's hissing and toss it aside. Got it. And, without waiting for an answer, pulled the pin.
The first thrown grenade rumbled so hard that we just looked at each other, and each of us, probably, thought to himself, our commander has invented such a good drill. Butov was followed by Mesexeyev, Gryazev, Kormilitsin. When I caught the grenade thrown at me, there was no ring in it, but the grenade did not explode. The fuse had been removed in advance.
So all the newbies were put through Bolshechapov's grenade exam on the march. And now it became clear to me that even before the start of fighting in Stalingrad, the men of Bolshechapov's company had become accustomed to fighting fear.
The coward all his life on his knees crawls before himself, Fiafanov once said, and one cannot but agree with him. Fear and cowardice live in the same nest, but they can be separated with a little effort on your part. Fear lives in every person. There are no people who are not afraid of death, and a coward is a creature more unpleasant. Having overcome fear, a person is capable of a feat, and a coward will remain a coward. Cunning and dies before others. Who wants to survive in battle, he must first of all, without forgetting the fear, suppress the coward in himself as a poisonous creep, which can bring you death before the time. It was from these considerations that I approached the selection of fighters for my sniper group. There is nothing to do with a coward on the front line. He will let himself down and ruin you.
At the exit from the basement, where there was a medical centre, I came across a big brute. He wore a soldier's sweatshirt, his head bandaged, and huge Kurzov boots on his feet. Rolling a cigarette with knotted fingers, he—
Listen, what's your name? I asked him. Yuboshenko, he replied in a slow, languid baritone.
Does your surname sound like Ukrainian? I made a guess to start the conversation.
SMD in the Prefecturovsk region. He briefly confirmed. Where did it hit you? Nodding at his bandaged head, I sympathetically inquired. On the section of Senior Lieutenant Kuchin, we were building a dugout. I am a sapper. What are you going to do next?
I can't carry logs. I feel dizzy. I'll beat the Nazis with a rifle.
I liked this handsome Ukrainian. I invited him from the cellar to the first floor to shoot. There we chose a rifle for him, wrapped his bandaged head with a torn gymnoskeleton jacket for camouflage, and took up firing positions. Uboshenko chose a place in the bricks of a ruined partition. Mamayev Kurgan, from the very foot to the top, was covered with smoke. The raid of enemy aviation had just ended, and before that our artillery had been hammering enemy positions here for an hour and a half.
But every minute it was getting brighter. Ubozhenko was the first to notice that Hitler's soldiers ran over to the railway embankment and began to dig a trench there.
"Do you see?" he asked me. "I see. What to do?" "The distance is 300 meters. Aim for the chest. Shoot when he turns to face you. Don't shoot him in the back." "Why not?" Ubozhenko was interested. "You will hit him, and the shovel will remain on the barrier. The other will come up to get the shovel. Hit him." He chose the moment and fired a shot. The fascist settled down in the trench. The shovel was left lying on the barrier. A few minutes passed. Someone from the trench reached for the shovel. Another shot. Ubozhenko shouted joyfully to me, "Marcia Vasil, did you see how I shot 2 Krauts? Good, well done. But now let's get out of this position, otherwise we'll be shot." Thus began the sniper school in our regiment. The first student was the teacher himself, and my teacher was my own mistakes and failures. A sniper must be a man of calculation, courage, and will. Sergeant Nikolai Kulikov was like that. Here is just one episode from his combat life. 200 meters south of the water tanks on Mamayev Kurgan, there was a burnt-out T-34 tank. 5 men from Shitilov's company set up a machine gun point under this tank. The position there was favorable. The fascist would come up to attack and immediately lie down under the downpour of fire. No matter how hard Hitlerites tried to suppress this machine gun, they could not do anything. Only in 3 days they managed to bypass the tank from the right and left. But the telephone connection with the garrison of daredevils under the tank was preserved, and there was a signal from... The mood is cheerful. We have taken a circular defense. We need grenades, machine gun, ammunition, reported Petty Officer Volovatik. Who will deliver boxes of ammunition and grenades under the tank? Company Commander Shitilov asked. Next to me stood Sergeant Abzelov, Sergeant Kulikov, and the gunner of the 45mm gun, Yakut Gavril Protodyakonov. Each of us thought over which way to get to the tank. We had to crawl right in front of the fascist positions, at a distance from the aiming fire of machine guns. The terrain was open, only craters and corpses of dead soldiers. We had no time to think about it when the liaison of the regiment commander went on this way. He was moving slowly but persistently, pushing ammunition boxes ahead of him. It began to get dark. Where the liaison crawled, something rattled, then crackled machine guns. Volovatik called again. Nikolai Kulikov answered the phone. "The contact is wounded. We must help him out." Was heard in the receiver. "I see," Kulikov answered. Volovatik recognized him by his voice and pleaded. "Kolya, dear, I need ammunition and grenades. Bring them." Volovatik did not say a word about bread and water. "I'll be with you in a moment. Put the samovar on. Prepare a snack. I'll bring you a drink." Kulikov replied. It was drizzling cold autumn rain. Nikolai took off his mackintosh, put it on the bottom of the trench and commanded, "Give here ammunition, grenades, food, and keep it quiet." We stacked everything, tied it up and dragged it along the bottom of the trench, making sure it didn't rattle. "Now give me the rope." Nikolai tied one end of the twine cord to the trench coat, took the other end in his teeth and crawled. He crawled quickly and skillfully. Tall, thin, flat figure, broad shoulders. In one fell swoop he reached the funnel. Following him crawled a cloaked tent with ammunition and food. In the darkness it was difficult to see how Nikolai Kulikov was moving towards the target. We could only guess that from funnel to funnel he skipped with a sharp throw and then pulled up his load. After a few minutes in the telephone receiver heard the joyful voice of Petty Officer Volovatik. Nick and I got there safely. Now we live. Till morning Nikolai Kulikov made several more trips, led under the tank the replenishment of machine gunners. Before dawn we lifted him from the bottom of the trench, dirty, wet and dead tired. But he was ready to crawl to the barrow again. I said, "Rest a little, Nikolai, your sniper is waiting for you." He opened his eyes and smiled. "If it is waiting, then let's go to the position. There is no time to rest." So we became friends with Nikolai Kulikov. In general, I was lucky to find good people in the sniper group. Strong, dexterous, savant. For example, Alexander Gryazev, my comrade in the Pacific Fleet. a man of extraordinary physical strength and bogatier spirit. Back in the days of fighting in the area of the metal factory, we used to joke about Griesi. Nerty take, Sasha, the roll of the carriage.
What for? He asked nonchalantly.
Close the hole in the wall. Sasha just as nonchalantly turned over the axle with heavy wheels and rolled it to the hole. After that, we were free to walk around the shop. Sasha used an anti-tank gun to fight with fire points in the bunkers. He skillfully chose positions and hit directly into the embrasures. It was great. Once Sasha Rutov, Ashri Tigerlov, as his friends nicknamed him, decided to play a joke on his namesake Gryazev. He brought a 6mm iron bar, threaded it through the trigger guard of an anti-tank gun, girdled the column and twisted the ends. It is easier to bend iron than to unbend it. Whose strength will prevail? The sun was hurriedly rolling down the slope and had already reached the top of the mound when Alexander Gryazev emerged from the ruins like a bear from a day he was on duty in the combat guard. He came, looked around, and with his usual calmness, like a child after his favourite toy, reached for his anti-tank gun. And it is tied. Sasha, of course, understood the joke of his comrades at once, but pretended that he did not notice anyone here, only muttered to himself. Well, my friends, they found time for fun. And just as calmly he bent down and took the rod by its protruding ends. Sasha's neck reddened, veins swelled, poured blood. The metal, resisting, creaked, snapped, and obeyed. The bar flew aside with a clang. Dinner was brought. The snipers gathered in the blacksmith shop. Rutov and Gryazev, the two Alexanders, sat side by side, eating in silence. There was a strong, good friendship between them. They could sit side by side for hours without saying a word to each other. Dinner came to an end. Spoons were hidden behind the shins of boots. Kettles were collected and sent to the Volga to wash. There was no water closer. Well, brother sailors, after the bread and salt, it's not a bad idea to have a smoke, suggested Orim Vasilchenko. Gryazev and I don't indulge in it, said Rutov. There's no benefit from Makorka, but a lot of harm. This for some reason hurt Gryazev. He turned to Rutov. Well, it's a different matter. It makes sense. They'd already risen and stopped chest to chest, 2 heavy men of 6 pounds each. What's the point?
Well, here's the point. Suppose the fascists rush at us, and we, so to speak, for tactical reasons, withdraw to the prepared positions. The fascists will grab your armour piercer, and it's tied. And they can't eye it. That's how your gun will be saved.
Gryazev took a step back, smiled and decided to cheat too. Thank you. Let me shake your kind hand for such a favour. Sasha Rutov realized what gratitude was coming, spread his legs wide and gave Gryazev his palm, wide as a shovel, calloused with thick, humped fingers. They clasped their hands together. It seemed as if someone's fingers were about to crunch, but neither of them thought of loosening their grip. The scythe had found its way into the stone. 2 minutes, 3, 5, and they're still standing against each other, red, squat, breathing intermittently. But now the mighty shoulders of both began to shudder. Finally, Sasha Rutov gave it. Let's go, or my arm will fall off. Gryazev immediately unclenched his fingers, and we saw drops of blood seeping from under Rutov's fingernails. Damn gorilla. He could have crushed his hand. Ryajev's smile. Your shovel won't even take a press. Then they hugged each other and went to their corner. With those big strong hands, Gryzin and Rutov deftly held sniper rifles. One day Misha Masayev and I were returning to my company from the left neighbour. We walked among the ruins, along paths barely visible. We were afraid to run into a minefield. Here, in front of the hardware factory, our and German mines are more dense than potatoes in a vegetable garden. And the company commander, Senior Lieutenant Bolsh, Shapov, stands near the machine gun. We hear behind the wall the fascists are having fun. They are celebrating success. They again occupied here one shop. Misha opened his mouth, wanted to say something, but the company commander skeet us, pressing his finger to his lips. We fell down, holding our breath. Then Bolshapov turned to us and, gazing intently, said, Do you understand? I understand. What do you understand? The fascists are at our side. That's right. The commander smiled. His mood is cheerful. By this he tried to show that there is nothing dangerous in our area. It's good, guys, that you came to me, stood with me at the wall, listened to the fascists. The company commander continued to jest. And now you need a quiet place and time to think over all the issues at liberty, to weigh them, to understand what's what. He looked at us with a smile, then frowned and announced in a different tone.
So, the most suitable place for this is in the secret. I am appointing Chief Petty Officer Zaitsev to be in charge of the secret.
Masayev again opened his mouth, but the company commander interrupted him. I know that you are the third day without sleep, but life is more expensive. The route is the same, the password is Tula. We crawled to the place of ambush, lay down among the tangled wire, camouflaged ourselves. The night was dark, dark. Rockets flashed in the air every now and then. From the asphalt factory, Hitlerites were shooting bursting bullets. They were hitting the wall of the boiler room where our machine guns were installed. Bullets hitting the wall, burst, echoed throughout the shop, creating the impression of complete encirclement. Our machine guns were silent. This silence disturbed the fascists. They could not determine what surprise the Russians were preparing for the morning. And in reality, our sailors and soldiers at this time slept like the dead. Both Misha Masayev and I wanted to sleep. My eyes closed by themselves. It seemed to me that I was dreaming, and I could see everything that was happening before my eyes. I tried to prove to myself that this is exactly so. Why the sound of a grenade bursting is much stronger than I hear now. Why does the fire of the exploded grenade consist of a bouquet of multicolored beams? But this can be seen only in a dream. Or maybe the fascists have crawled past us. Maybe they have already slaughtered our sailors. I didn't justify the commander's trust. I didn't save my friends' lives. With what eyes will I return to the company commander? I bit my lip, pressed it with my teeth so that the sharp pain, like cold water, refreshed my consciousness. I felt a thick, brackish liquid on my tongue. So it's bleeding, I thought, and spat to the side. Masayev turned his head in my direction, asked, No. Chief, why are you spitting like a camel? I ate a piece of fish, now I'm spitting blood. Misha confessed. I stabbed my hand with a knife. Does it help? Masayev reply. A little refreshing. I sharpened my inseparable finger properly. That night, our medicine got a big kick out of the fact that they hadn't created such pills. If I had swallowed them, I wouldn't have wanted to sleep.
I was convinced in practice. The hardest torture for a man is not sleeping for several days in
the east, a lightning flickered, then slowly turned white. We made our way back to the breach in the wall of the tool shop. From under the wire, we dived into a deep funnel, pressed against the ground and through the breach in the wall. We looked in the direction of the enemy. At first, there was no one. We wanted to sneak into the shop on our half, but Masayev was the first to see the feet of a fascist soldier, pulled my hand, and we froze on the spot. We heard the measured clatter of forged boots. The fascist was walking along the wall like a caged tiger. On the heels of his boots shined horseshoes. Here he approached the breach. We can clearly see the thick soles of his oversized boots. While the fascist was walking around the shop, we thought over a plan how to catch him. We decided to bait him like a gudgeon. Masayev had a big gold pocket watch with a massive long chain on it. When the fascist left, Masayev took the watch out of his pocket, put it between the bricks, put a little sand on it and pressed himself against the wall. Lutov leisurely grabbed the Kraut by the arm, turned him according to the rules of the scout, stroked him against the wall, and he settled down. His blue eyes poured blood, his nostrils flared like those of an enraged beast. He was an old soldier. He kept saying the same thing during the interrogation. I didn't surrender. Russian soldiers fight wrong. They deceive. It was impossible to send a prisoner to the bank of the Volga River during the daytime. One has to wait a whole day until darkness falls, and a lot of changes can happen in a day. For greater reliability, they decided to tie up the fascist and put him for safekeeping in Klava's infirmary. The bound fascist, like a sack of chaff, was placed against the wall near the heating radiator.
With Masayev we had a real, even sumptuous breakfast. Sleepless nights, fatigue were taking over. Our strength was leaving us. Senior Lieutenant Bolsheshapov gave us 3 hours to rest. Masayev went down into the cellar, opened the iron door, pushed himself into a corner among the severely wounded soldiers and snored. Nicholas Logvinenko came after me and dragged me to the battalion Commander Captain Kotov for a report. The senior adjutant grabbed his papers, and all three of us began to sneak among the ruins in the office of the metalware factory, in the basement of which was the headquarters of the battalion. The cellar room is large. There were double iron doors on the east side. Near the wall stood a two-desk clerical desk of dark colour. Between the wall and the desk was a black velvet upholstered sofa. There were telephones in leather bags on the desk. A tall tower was visible from the cellar window. From the height of this tower sniper, artilleryman Vasily Feofanov adjusted artillery fire. He kept in touch with the artillery command centre by radio. My legs were shaking from fatigue, rocking from side to side.
Next to the commander sat Battery Commander Ilya Shuklin. He was smiling and Captain Kotov was pale. His hands were shaking, his nostrils flared. Captain Shuklin's calmness and smile kind of refreshed me. Lieutenant Fedosov chose a momentary break in the conversation and reported to the angry combat about my arrival. The captain looked me over from head to toe, then barked at Fedosov. Take me to the dugout, let me rest for 2 hours, then come. I came out of the cellar. There was a battle in the city. Nazi planes were still buzzing in the air, smelling of smoke and cinders. 2 anti-tank guns were set up near the wall. A broad-shouldered, cheerful soldier was hanging around them. He greeted me like an old friend. "Let's get acquainted," he said in broken Russian. "Gavril Dmitrievich Protodyakonov, a Yakut. The commander, 6. Fascist tanks must be beaten here. And who?" I named myself. "I know you well. You need a lot of sleep. Come to my pit. I've got a sack, a pillow. We'll sleep well together." Gavril led me to his dugout, and I laid down on his bed made of planks from shell crates, but it seemed softer to me than any feather bed. On 24 October, our group of snipers, Gryazeev, Morozov, Shaikin, Kurikov, Dvoyashkin, Kostrikov, and me, was transferred to the site of the neighbouring regiment, the eastern slope of Mamayev Kurgan. We were assigned a site at height 102.0, the most inconvenient and dangerous. The trenches were dug on a slope, the distance to the fascist front line, 150 metres. Previously, this area was defended by soldiers from a company of anti-tank rifles. A week ago, the company commander was wounded. He was sent to the infirmary, and the company without a commander suffered heavy losses. Armour-bearers were buried here, in the trenches. Now there were only 2 men left in the company. From time to time they crawled from the armoured fighters to the machine guns and fired in the direction of the enemy, making it look as if everything was all right here. There were a lot of people. Not far from the heights a spring was beating. Fresh, clean water beckoned to the fascists, and they, as the guide of the regiment told us, seeing no danger from the armoured fighters, began to come here in the morning with cans and thermoses. You can expect them to organise a collective washing here. A good object for snipers, I thought, and asked for a guy. "Before dawn, lead us quickly to the place." The guide replied, "You can't go fast. Before dawn, the fascists throw a grenade into every crater here. Every bush is poured with a machine gun burst. They're afraid, damned. They're burning the road for water." "Let's throw," Sasha Grazev suggested. I supported him. The guide turned out to be brave. We made one throw, the second, and found ourselves on the edge of a ravine, at the bottom of which a stream flowed from a spring. They crouched down to the ground. There was dead silence all around, even rockets did not take off. It is bad, such silence is not good. It is dangerous to dig in. We crawl further, looking for a crater or an empty trench. It is inconvenient for a sniper to crawl. The rifle thrown behind the back falls down every now and then. We have to stop and correct it often. And here we have to protect the machine gun from sands is a misfortune for it. We descended to the bottom of the ravine, pressed against a crevice, and then a fascist machine gun burst. Well, now we can act more boldly under this noise, I thought. But the machine gun did not work for long. Only I wanted to cross the bottom of the ravine, as the guide stopped. Now it will start shooting again. The ground fell on our helmets from above. The machine gun was beating on the eastern slope of the ravine. Now, as soon as it goes silent, immediately dash across the ravine and hide behind that ledge over there, the guide said. Our company is there? They made a dash, hid. Where is the company? I'm going to look for it, said the guide. But first listen to my plan. I will advance and talk loudly or no matter what. Suddenly the fascists killed all ours and I will be captured. Or my own people will take me for a stranger. I'll shout, I'll call you, only then go. Understand? Yes. The two-hand machine guns are wrapped in a cloak tent, buried in the sand. In that place lies a German helmet crumpled by shrapnel. Look for grenades and ammunition in the same trench. 5 steps to the east and immediately to the right. There is a small warehouse. The guide left, we stayed where we were, hiding. We hear the guide's signals. Road, road, he repeats. This is a good Russian word. By it you can always recognize who is speaking, Russian or German. Germans can't pronounce this word. They make it Garoka. Even German scouts dressed in our uniforms fail at this word. As soon as he says Taroka, so he is caught. The guide's voice disappeared. Where are you, road, road? Why is he silent? Had he been so caught that he had no time to shout? Another 5 minutes passed, and here he is in front of us, out of breath. Anybody there? I asked. Yes, 2 of them alive, waiting for your help. The Krauts, 50 of them, have accumulated since evening against them. Come on, let's go quickly. Let's prepare a meeting for them. Me. Sasha Gryazev got hot. Don't be in a hurry, I told him. Leaving the extra load in place, we rushed forward with only automatic rifles and gas mask bags full of grenades. At the first machine gun stood an armoured gunner with a beard. He had no time to shave here. Nestling against the edge of the barrier, he was looking at the enemy.
Here, what attracts you there? I asked him.
Without stopping his observation, he replied,
The Germans, and after a moment's silence, he showed. Look, do you see silhouettes against the background of the dawn? They are preparing to make a run to the corner trench. There they have a platform for a mortar. They want to cover the moorings of our boat, crossing with mines. Bastards! Sasha Gryazev couldn't stand it. I can see them well. Give me a couple of anti-tank ones.
Sasha became furious. I must cool his ardor a little. I take his bear's paw and calmly say, You're going to throw grenades. A fight will break out. We're few, and we don't know how to maneuver yet. Tell me, Chief, what should we do? Firstly, to study the situation and maneuver conditions. Secondly, to choose firing positions so that we could shoot the fascists in the trench. Why only in the trench? They have a limited view from the trench. They can't see where we're shooting from. This trench can make a good trap, like a firing corridor. If necessary, we'll block this corridor with grenades. Understood. Sasha agreed not very willingly. With the dawn instead of morning birds, bursting bullets clicked everywhere. The lead of machine gun bursts whistled. Our sniper posts were positioned in the front line of defence. Their task was as follows. As soon as the Germans would rush into the attack, first of all to put officers out of action, then to destroy the leading soldiers and grenades, military equipment. And yet Sasha Gryazev took a bag with anti-tank grenades, threw a machine gun behind his back and crawled to the fascist machine gun under the cover of which the soldiers were gathering. Approaching stealthily, he threw 2 anti-tank grenades. As it was to be expected, an unfavourable for us fight ensued. Hitlerites bypassed our group from the right and left. We were almost cut off. The only way out of the encirclement was shot by dense machine gun fire, so there was no point in retreating. We remained under siege. 24 hours passed, too. We held on. Sniper fire forced the fascists to give up their forays to the spring. They lost many soldiers on the mortar platform, from which they did not manage to make a single shot at the boat berths. During the night, the commander's liaison officer sneaked to us. He brought an order from the division command. Hold the positions until the last possible opportunity. We can't leave the heights. Autumn is the same everywhere. The weather changes constantly. The sun warms up, then a cold rain drizzles, then the cold stings and icy grits fall. That's how we sat for 2 days surrounded, not letting our weapons out of our hands for a minute. Sometimes it would rain in the evening, and by dawn the steppe wind would blow. Oh, how unhappy such moments are. You huddle in the corner of the trench, and when you are almost dead without movement, the overcoat's hollow will freeze to the ground. Hitlerites more than once slid down the slope to our trenches, and then we pelted them with grenades. Grenades had to be thrown far away, so that they could not roll down the slope back into the trench before the explosion. Here Gryazev's long, strong arms came in handy. Sasha walked along the whole line of defence like a watchman in a vegetable garden, and as soon as the fascists came within throwing distance, he raised his long arm with an anti-tank grenade and threw it precisely into the target. At first there was dust and smoke. Then everything dissipated and we saw the results of the explosion. Not bad results. The third night was coming to an end. Not a single star in the black sky. Heavy clouds seemed to have crushed all living things on Mamayev Kurgan. The front line of the Germans is 100 metres away from us. Now things we can hear how there, in the trenches, kettles and metal mugs are ringing. Soldiers are tapping heel to heel. They are knocking mud off their boots, warming their feet. You can hear everything, but you can't make out speech. Since childhood we didn't learn a foreign language. We ran away from lessons, and now we scold ourselves. All night we watched the enemy's behaviour. We couldn't sleep. Once in a while we looked back at the Volga. The wind rippled the black surface of the Volga water. The cold light of the sky made us sad. Clouds of blue mist slowly crept over the ruins. From the penetrating pre-dawn wind it was getting colder and colder. In the trenches of the enemy began to revive. Small groups of German soldiers began to get closer to our trenches. We took sniper rifles and dealt with them without much difficulty. They did not succeed in surprise. We had to wait not long for the return blow. The ground in front of our positions was ruffled by a downpour of machine gun and machine gun bursts. We left the firing zone, and soon our targeted sniper fire silenced the machine guns. And here the grenade launcher Sasha Gryazev was on the start again. He turned round slowly, brought his arm round, bent one knee as if he was winding up a tight spring, and threw a great... He was a master. I asked Gryazev to give me at least one grenade. No, don't touch them with your short hands. He said, you must take care of grenades. For 3 days Gryazev threw a lot of grenades, killing dozens of fascist soldiers. Sniper bullets and grenades helped us to fulfill the order of the division commander. We did not give up our positions at height 102.0, and to all appearances we were to hold here not one more day and not one more night. No one thought about withdrawal.
For the 4th day already we are under siege. We waited for night to take new posts and...
At last the rays of the setting sun coloured the puffy clouds bright pink. The engines of fascist aeroplanes stopped humming in the air. The clouds over the city darkened, but the dawn glow was still visible on the horizon for a long time. Only by midnight we finished the equipment of sniper posts. I wanted to sleep and drink. The Germans cut off the approach to the spring with a mine barrier, but we also did not let them near the water by machine gun fire and sniper rifles.
That night dinner was not delivered to us again. We were tormented by hunger, but stronger than hunger was thirst. Our mouths were dry, our tongues were heavy. We did everything in silence, understanding each other without words. From the look and behaviour of my comrades, I understood without explanation. They all asked for rest, at least to lie on the ground, to gain a little strength. I gave the command to rest, and myself together with Kostrikov remained in the combat.
Armed with rocket launchers, we agreed on a signal in case of alarm and went in different directions. I clearly perceived the night whisper of the wind, the flight of mines, the flickering lights of cigarettes in the camp of the enemy, the faint aroma of tobacco smoke. I wanted to smoke even more strongly, but there was nothing to smoke. Muffled metallic clattering, scraps of German phrases irritated me. I wanted to smoke. Besides, I was irresistibly drawn to sleep. Kostrikov came up to me and, as if having guessed my thoughts, began to shake the pockets of the dead. Soon we had a cigarette, and sleep drifted away. We knew well that the enemy was preparing a trap for us, building false positions. Here we needed special vigilance and special cunning.
I stuck the shovel into the ground all the way down, put my ear to the end of the spade, like to a telephone receiver, and listened. The shovel in the ground, like a palm on a human chest, transmits to me the tension of the ground at the top of the mound. Somewhere in the distance, a stone is being chiselled or a stake is being hammered in. A little further away, something weighty is being dropped on the ground, perhaps food crates or sandbags. No earthworks are heard, but very near the footsteps, Hitlerites loudly knock on the ground-forged boots, pass along the trenches. This is a change of guards at the firing points.
After a while I woke up the sniper Kulikov, who was sleeping nearby. He jumped up as if scalded with boiling water, grabbed his automatic rifle. Where are they crawling?
Nowhere. It's just time for you to be awake.
A German machine gunner on duty appeared on the heights. He was a newcomer. It was easy to shoot him with a rifle with an open sight even in the dark, but I did not bother my comrades. Again, there was a comparative calm. I went round the sniper pairs. My friends had long since changed and, curled up in a lump in the trenches, were resting sitting down. I went back to my partner Nikolai Kulikov. I decided to sleep a little. Soldiers' overcoats were lying in the trench. Their owners have long been sleeping in the ground on the Mame of Kurgan, and the overcoats were left to their friends. Burying my head in the overcoats, I sank into sleep. Nikolai stood at the machine gun. He was afraid to sit down. If you sit down, drowsiness will creep up unnoticed. It was better to drive it away standing up, even if the bullets whistled overhead.
Before dawn, as agreed, Kulikov woke me up.
Worst of all, without water. I thought it would be easier at night, but there's no way. How was the duty? I asked.
It was all right.
It was getting brighter by the minute. The snipers came up to me and each one asked, "And today there will be no water." "We'll endure it. It's no big deal," I consoled my comrades. Their lips were chapped, their faces were shriveled. And suddenly a light flashed in Kostrikov's eyes. The soldier ploughed to the bottom of the trench, spread his legs wide, threw his head back and shouted loudly, "Brothers, water?"
He smiled happily and was silent. We looked under his feet and saw nothing.
"Well, tell me, where is your water there?" Kostrikov narrowed his black eyes.
Where is the water, you ask? And over there how many fascists are lying around, you see? So what? Gryazev replied in his thick bass.
"So they have water in their flasks. We should search the dead." "Reason," agreed Kulikov. He was the most thirsty of all. "It's always reasonable," said Dr. Voyashkin, "but such a sortie must be covered with fire."
Aye. Kulikov and Voyashkin immediately moved to their points. Hardly had I time to press myself against the rifle butt when helmets flashed in the sight. A few seconds passed, and the fascists threw a machine gun on the berm and opened fire. Shifting my rifle, I fired. The machine gun fell silent. No fresh head appeared at the machine gun, and it became clear to me. I was being followed. I had to change my position, leaving the helmeted scarecrow in my place. I took my trench periscope and began to move along the trench to the other scarecrows to replace one of them with myself.
In the meantime, Gryazev and Kostrikov were finishing their operation, a sortie for flasks. They chose a place near our old CP. That's what we called our assembly point, our foxhole. When it was necessary to gather, my cap went up. This time, however, it was Kostrikov who put up his pilot's cap. I didn't even believe that they had done it so quickly. But when I came to the CP, I saw 5 tanks on the tent at Kostrikov's feet. There was some rusty, bitter liquid in them. In a good time, they would not have touched it, but here they swallowed it greedily. And at once they all came to life. At about 10 o'clock in the morning on our left, on the southern slopes of the mound, the enemy soldiers began to move. They were moving down a deep trench to their anti-tank battery, whose guns were aimed at the tunnel under the railway. It was an ambush against our tanks, which, if the offensive began, the guns could really do a lot of damage. But the defenders of the city centre had few tanks, and we could not think of a big offensive at that time. Therefore, only 2 of our snipers, Volovatic and Podkofov, were assigned to fight the guns. They took good positions, camouflaged themselves, and with their accurate fire little by little put the servants of the gun crews out of action. That is why, during the day, there was usually dead stillness on the battery. From above, from the slopes of Mamayev Kurgan, we could see these guns well. They were pressed against the southern foot of the height like frozen eels and seemed forgotten. We were no longer paying attention to them, and that was our mistake. After all, today enemy soldiers moved to the battery, but they did not show themselves near the guns. They lurked somewhere, preparing some insidious move against us. What is it? Having looked carefully, I noticed that the big trench had whiskers, narrow, shallow slits with round holes at the ends. Rifle cells. How did we miss it? When did they have time to dig them out? Tonight? No way. Did my shovel phone fool me? Hardly.
At that moment, Volovatikar discovered a new group of German soldiers. They crowded in the range of landmark number 5. So we called the broken anti-aircraft gun on the slope of the mound. It is only 80 meters away from us.
I see the enemy, reported Volovotyk. Before I could say a word, Sasha Gryazev grabbed 2 anti-tank grenades and rushed along the trench. "Stop, back," I shouted.
Sasha stopped and, spreading his legs wide, suddenly looked at me so reproachfully that it seemed to me that his grey eyes were about to throw sparks. "Chief, let me kill the fascists, and I'll destroy the position at the same time," he said with irony and, after a silence, seriously added, "You can't beat all of them. Let others increase their score."
I was taken by surprise by this reproach. We actually kept personal record sheets, personal account of revenge against the fascists, where each figure for each day was certified by the signature of eyewitnesses of successful shots. My account was indeed the largest of all. Sasha Gryazev's signature testified to that. What should I say to him now? He stood in a questioning pose, waiting for my answer. Everyone, holding their breath, looked at us.
Sasha touched my heart. I waved my hand in agreement. Sasha smiled triumphant.
I would have done it a long time ago, and I was tormented by conscience. I tried to remember where and when I abused my power, i.e. increased my score, and kept my partner as a bait, a target. Everyone smoked in silence, seeing how I was worried. But still, guys, it's a purchase. Run, Nikolai Ostapovich. I asked Kulikov. You catch up with Sasha and tell him that now he will fall into a trap. There may be a sniper in the shooting cells.
Kulikov did not have time to catch up with Sasha. Throwing a grenade, Sasha was too late to sit down. An enemy burst bullet hit him in the right side of his chest.
I ran up to him. He didn't moan. Calmly took out his Komsomol ticket and said,
"Sick it, Vasya. You're right, it's a sniper's ambush. Tell the comrades that I'm dying a communist."
We took off his uniform to bandage his torn chest. His right arm was hanging like a whip. Blood was gushing from the wound. There was nothing to bandage. We took off his calf skin to bandage it. The fire in Alexander's eyes flashed again. He pulled out of my hands a bloody calf skin, put it on the bayonet, stood up, shook his rifle in the direction of the enemy. "No, bandits, victory is ours," and fell into the arms of my comrades.
There were 80 meters to the fascist trench. The German trench was not damaged by the grenade burst, and we lost such a great man from a single shot. How I cursed myself for not showing firmness, not stopping Gryazev. In his Komsomol ticket, Alexander Gryazev left a testament to his son. Not that patriot who talks a lot about the motherland, but the one who is ready to give his life for it.
"For the sake of the motherland and your life, my son, I am ready to do anything. Grow up, my dear little boy, learn. Love your motherland not with words. Love it with your labour." On Sasha's grave we swore to avenge the fascists for his death. That day was hard, though the Germans did not make strong attacks. They did not bomb from the air. Only twice from water tanks fascist chains came up in attack, but both attacks we repulsed by machine gun and machine gun fire. The sniper rifles were covered with cloak tents at that time. The sun was rolling down. The horizon was blushing. A faint breeze blew. Only by the movement of the smoke could one ascertain its direction. The rusty dust lay in an even layer on the ground on our shoulders.
At last night came. Black and blue velvet moulded the east, and in the west a bright streak of light glistened. I looked in that direction in a kind of stupor. The death of Sasha Gryazev had crushed me. I didn't want to eat, drink, or move. Only my ears automatically noted what was being done in the camp of the enemy.
Near the railway, there was a metallic clang. Probably the enemy's artillerymen were repairing their guns. The shouts of the officers on the heights were well heard. The machine guns on duty rattled there. The bastards were afraid or were amusing themselves with empty firing. Suddenly a thick fog descended, even if you could not see. It cheered me up. Such darkness helps the spies. They can come here for their tongue.